Well, he became a hero not only to football fans or Pittsburgh Steelers fans, but to Americans in general when he decided to come out and stand for the national anthem. That's the story of Alejandro Villanueva, but unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and this is your right angle about two different kinds of courage. So if you don't know by now, Alejandro Villanueva is a player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a former Army Ranger. And as a former vet, when the rest of his team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, decided not to come out at all for the national anthem, he was the only person standing there. And for the last several days, many Americans have thought, good, this guy deserves our support, and sales of his jerseys went through the ceiling and so on. However, a few days later, we find out that Villanueva comes out and apologizes for doing that. He apologizes for throwing his teammates under the bus. And here's a direct quote from his press conference about the controversy that he started by coming out and standing for the national anthem. He said, I made Coach Tomlin look bad, and that is my fault and my fault only. I made my teammates look bad, and that is my fault and my fault only. Alejandro, no. Your teammates made you look bad. You didn't make them look bad. They made you look bad. By staying in the locker room during a national anthem to raise the flag that you fought for, they made you look bad. You did the right thing, and you did the right thing instinctively. So when I say two kinds of courage, what I'm talking about is this. There is physical courage, which I have no doubt this man has in large measure. But there's also moral courage. And moral courage is the ability to resist peer pressure. I think it's really just that simple. I have no doubt that the second that was over, and certainly when his jersey sales went through the ceiling and everybody else, the teammates and the NFL and the coach and everybody leaned on this guy so hard that they convinced him he did the wrong thing. He did the right thing. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. So, Scott, what do we say about this? You know, just before we rolled this episode, we talked yesterday about about him coming out and standing for the national anthem. And just before we hit the record button, we said, and then he said he apologized for throwing his team under the bus. And you went, oh, no. Where did that come from?
Well, you know, when you think about it, Bill, he didn't make his team look bad. If anything, he made his team look good. And I'm putting this in their context, okay? Because let's just say that Mr. Villanueva did not show up at all and he was back in the locker room with everybody else. Then what would be the image? The image would be of nothing. There's nobody out there. Okay, so the absence of something is nothing, and it doesn't highlight the fact that the whole team's back in the locker room. Now, if you're on the team, if you're the coach, why would you think he made you look bad? Because he's the one who looks bad in your mind, because he's standing up with his hand over his heart for the national anthem, when he should be protesting the terrible situation we have in our inner cities with cops going out hunting for young black men. So, I don't see how anybody thinks, anybody on the left or anybody on the side of the guys taking a knee or staying in the locker room thinks that he made them look bad. He didn't make them look bad. He made them look like, you know, the virtuous ones from their point of view. Now, that said, let me stand up for Alejandro Villanueva for a second here, because I can see this guy looking at this situation and going, you know what? One of my prime values that I learned with the Army Rangers is unit cohesion. We stick together. Come hell or high water. In hindsight, he looked back and he thought, I distinguished myself from the team. That was bad. And I can see him looking at that beyond any political ramifications of it, but just thinking, you know what? I made my team look bad because I separated myself from them.
Well, that's an excellent defense, and I think there's a great deal of merit to that defense. However, Steve, I think Scott touched really on the main, like on the third rail here. I think the reason that this became such a story was because Pittsburgh in particular and the country in general rallied around him and made this a worldwide news story. Apparently, he almost did it by accident. He was standing, as you pointed out earlier, Scotty, before the show, that he was basically standing in the tunnel. He was just barely visible there. But I suspect he went out there to do it and nobody else, he didn't know anybody else followed him. Maybe he did know, I don't know. I'm hoping he knew. I'm praying that he knew. I find it hard to believe that he could just wander off without knowing. So your point about unit cohesion is great. I understand that. Teams, and look, I'm not a member of those things, so I don't understand how deep those bonds are, but those bonds are very deep. My response to this would be, Unit cohesion in the Army is very, very important, but if you have a cohesive Army unit that is about to overthrow the United States government or turn against the flag that they're fighting for, then all of a sudden that unit cohesion is not such a good thing. Steve, the thing I'm interested in this, the thing that I'm interested in is this. Scotty, I think, really touched on it. By standing there and being the only player willing to stand for the national anthem, whether he did it intentionally or by accident, what Alejandro Villanueva became was he became the anti-Colin Kaepernick. He was the anti-image of him. He was the person who had the courage to stand up for a country and to stand for the national anthem and all the rest of it. And it's a measure of how sick this country is that we're having this discussion in the first place. But put that aside, I think the fact that Alejandro Villanueva stood for the national anthem caused such an unbelievable release and backlash on the part of the football fans and the American public that it made the rest of the people on the Steelers, in the NFL, and so on realize just how badly outnumbered they are on this issue as far as public support goes.
Yeah, I love Scott's take on it. Scott's just got a much bigger heart than I do. I'm afraid rather than the positive case of unit cohesion, this was the negative case of the left brooks no dissent, not even from a former Army Ranger who now plays football in one of the most storied football cities in the nation. And how sad is that the dissent they can't brook is to stand up for the Star Spangled Banner. Like I want to talk about this in terms of courage, because I was so disappointed to see Villanueva turn his back on what he done on Sunday. But there were two genuine cowards this last Sunday who haven't been reported on much at all. Two national anthem singers. I wrote their names down because I didn't want to get this wrong. I'd never heard of them before. But Rico Lavelle and Megan Lindsay, apparently she's a star from one of those singing contest shows, and Rico Lavelle has had a couple of hits. I don't know. But here's what they did on Sunday. They each took their turn singing the national anthem at whatever games they were singing for, and then after they were done, they took the knee. How do you protest the national anthem by singing it? You can't do that. If you believe that the national anthem represents some racist, horrible nation, then you don't go out on that field.
That's right.
You don't go out on that field and sing that song and stir everybody's hearts the way that song can do, and then take a knee. No, damn it. You either stand there and you don't sing, you don't show up at all. But it's no protest. There's no courage. There's no principle involved in doing one thing and then the other. You're just a big, fat hypocrite, and I hope these two never get invited to perform anywhere in front of patriotic Americans ever again.
Hey,
just
Steve,
absolute cowards.
What's next? That the Air Force does a non-flyover with the missing squadron formation? I mean, what?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm protesting me for this thing I just sang. What the hell is that?
When I first heard the news this morning, he said he apologized for throwing his team under the bus. He didn't throw his team under the bus. Team threw him under the bus. Here's a man who went out to defend his country, fight for that flag, and he decided that the national anthem was worth standing up for. He has a right to an opinion too, doesn't he? If everybody out there defending Colin Kaepernick's ability to take a knee during the national anthem and show his contempt for this country, by showing contempt for the country. It's not the same that he's protesting or demonstrating for an issue. He's showing contempt for the country. The entire point of the country is we're supposed to be able to disagree. So if Colin Kaepernick is allowed to go out there and in fact celebrated by the left for taking a knee, I guarantee you the left hit Alejandro Villanueva with everything they had in the 2-day interim or whatever it was to make him go out and apologize for his double plus ungood thought crime. I guarantee you. And I am very sad to see that he actually buckled under that pressure. There is a difference between physical courage and moral courage. I have no doubt whatsoever that this man is filled with physical courage. I have no doubt whatsoever he honorably served this country in the U.S. Army, and I have no doubt whatsoever that he personally is being torn apart by this, that both of his, in his individual case anyway, I get the feeling that both of his contrary instincts are both very noble. I think Scott hit it just right on the head. I think he loves his country. I also think he understands that he's a part of the team and the team is important. But, you know, Alejandro, you got to make a decision sometimes. And you got to decide which one of these two things is more important. You may not have asked for this controversy, but you find yourself in the middle of it. And you need to stick up for what you actually believe in. And I think my final close on this is this. When you take a stand on something, and it's something you genuinely believe in, and it causes an outrage, you've basically pissed off half the country. But if you go out and apologize for something that you meant to do in the first place because of the backlash, now you've lost the other half of the country. Yeah. Now you've lost everybody. Okay? What you did, whether you knew it or not, was a stand. And in the time between that and your press conference, you had time to decide which one of these values was more important to you. And everybody I know who heard the news that he apologized had the same reaction that I saw on the face of Scott Ott 30 seconds before we rolled cameras. He did. Okay, well, this is what happens when politics enters the NFL. It destroys the NFL. Everything that the left touches is destroyed. That's what they do. If you don't destroy the status quo, how can you have the workers' paradise? Their job is to destroy things, and that's what they're doing. And I'm sorry what seems to be a very good man got caught in the middle of it. I genuinely am. But I was brutally disappointed, and I know I'm not the only one. Steve Green's segment talks about the kneeling issue and a sort of an overlap with an interesting kind of a energetic discussion. And we invite you to watch that right angle as well. For everybody here at BillWhittle.com, including my friends Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.